Hi, everyone. Thank you all so much for being here for this inaugural installment of our new series where we're highlighting different musicians throughout the Jewish music world who have done interesting things and really offered like great contributions to the Jewish music world. And this couldn't be kicked off better than with Josh Dolgin, aka Socalled, my friend, and just I thought really hard about how best to introduce Josh because you can't say any one thing. You can talk about Josh, the Yiddish music specialist, Josh, the hip hop artist, Josh, the puppeteer. There are so many things that you have done that you're just such an amazing musician and artist. And I'm so glad that you're here with us to share a little bit of what makes what you do special with the whole group. So before I throw it over to you, I do just want to make a plug for a few different organizations. First, definitely check out Josh's website, socalledmusic.com. It's in the chat bar. I also linked his Bandcamp to it as well. Please also check out the Lowell Milken Fund for American Jewish Music, the sponsor of this amazing event. We offer Jewish music programming in the forms of education, performance, and research. And we do some really amazing stuff. And as with every organization all over the world right now, we have found another way to bring Jewish music to you. So please, since we're all on the internet so much these days anyway, go ahead, peruse the websites. And I just can't say enough that there is not a better time to support all musicians by going on their websites, going to different Bandcamp sites, and buying their music. Just like the old days, there is not a better time to help out these musicians. So with that, I want to throw it over to Josh Dolgin, a.k.a. Socalled.
All right. Well, thank you, Lori. And this is, of course, very strange and disembodied of an experience to be sitting here addressing people somewhere that are hopefully somewhere from my childhood bedroom. But here we go. First of all, thank you, Lori. Thank you, the Milken Archive and all the efforts that you've done. And
Milken Fund.
Milken Fund, sorry.
No worries.
We're related, but I know what you mean. Milken Fund and Lowell Milken and everybody down there in UCLA that's just doing such awesome stuff and trying to figure out ways to really share this legacy and share Jewish music in new and efficient ways like this, and it's my great honor to be, the inaugural talking head in this disembodied pandemic experience that we're going through. And I thought when you asked me to do something and talk about how I got to be where I am and a bit of my process, it's funny that I am here. I'm talking to you now from my childhood bedroom, which is in Chelsea, Quebec. In Canada, it's about a 20-minute drive from Ottawa. And this is where, because of this insane global madhouse that's going on, I am now stuck up in my childhood bedroom. But I can talk to you, so it's kind of amazing. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I started and why I got into Jewish music, and then I will hopefully have some time to show you my process, at least sort of the process that got me a bit of a name in this movement, in this Yiddish revival movement, and in this Jewish music, sort of taking Jewish music outside of beyond borders and sharing this music with a sort of more broad public. So I'm just going to get right into it and just tell you who I am and how it all started. Lori?
Josh, just want to pop in real quick. I almost forgot to say, if any of you have questions throughout, Josh, I can leave it to you to whether you want to take some questions throughout. You can use the raise your hand function. And more to the point, please use the chat function to drop any questions. I will be monitoring that. And, we'll keep an eye on it as there's breaks make sense throughout the hour, maybe we'll take a few questions.
Please, yes. The more questions, the better. Except for any questions for my parents. They're not allowed to ask any questions. I can go downstairs and answer their questions when the hour is through. Okay, Mom? So you behave down there. And wow, my mom and dad, I get to be in quarantine with my mom and dad. How awesome is that for Passover? So, okay. So I was born here in Chelsea, Quebec. Well, actually, I was born in Ottawa, but I grew up in this house. We were the only Jewish family in this town, effectively. There was basically there's one other Jewish family, the veterinarian of our town. But it's really kind of the country. It's basically, we're in the Gatineau Hills. It's 20 minutes from town, but it feels like you're in the country. And growing up, the only Jewish kid in my high school, and this is like a biggish high school for Gatineau and the region, 1,000 or so students, but I was the only Jewish kid. And that was okay. But I was always kind of different. But it also felt like it was fine. I never felt like anti-Semitized. I felt, in fact, that my difference growing up in Canada at that time in the 80s and 90s, like, it was cool to be different. It was okay. We were all different. And in this Canadian sort of mosaic vibe, you could be different and you could have your own culture and you could share that with people. And that was actually, that was encouraged, and it was celebrated to be different and have different languages, have different cultural experiences, have different religions, so we could all live together. And also just growing up in the country, we were sort of isolated. If we wanted to celebrate Jewish stuff, we would have to drive 40 minutes into town to the synagogue, where we were members of a Reform synagogue. And the reason I'm sort of starting like this is just to say that my experience with Yiddish culture and with Jewish culture, it was as almost as an outsider later on in my life, when I went to university, when I wasn't a kid. I didn't grow up with this music and with this language, with this culture. In fact, the only Jewish experience I had was, going to synagogue. We would go twice a week. And then really it was about the family stuff, and it was about holidays, and it was about the food, and it was about celebrating together with my family. And Hebrew was the language that we learned in Hebrew school. And I was never so into the religious thing. I was always kind of fighting against that and being a rebel and just like not really believing. And I wasn't really into, I was into Hebrew, but the language, the way that it was taught then, and the way that this, like, I think it's probably still taught, is that I would learn Hebrew to read it so that I could perform for my bar mitzvah, and I could read from the Torah, but I didn't understand it. So we learned this language to read and recite it without knowing what it was, which is kind of a crazy way to learn a language. So I was always the alienated son. I don't know which son I was in the Seder story, but I was always the son who was always asking questions and not feeling a part of this Jewish story, even though it was deeply rooted in my family and in my home life and in going to synagogue and all that. And it was always interesting. I always liked that being a little different thing. So meanwhile, learning music, being forced and bribed by my mother to play the piano and take classical piano lessons. And then I went to high school and played in the band and played trombone. And then in high school, I was a teenager in a time of the golden age of hip hop. And even though I was this white Jewish kid in Canada growing up, for some reason that music was the music of my community, and it was the music of my friends and my scene. So we started listening to the Wu-Tang Clan and Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre and Mobb Deep and Tribe Called Quest. And it really was the golden age, because, there had been disco in the 70s that had sort of turned into an early form of hip hop in the 80s, and then it really came together in the 90s. And now hip hop and rap has sort of become the lingua franca of all popular music. You hear hip hop in everything now, but at the time it was kind of a subculture that you sort of had to seek out. So I wanted to participate, and I wanted to make rap music. But I would listen to my favorite rap artists, and I would see that they were always talking about where they were from, and they were representing their crew. They were representing their story. They were telling the stories from their streets, and they were using the music and culture of their roots to tell those stories. So you listen to Dr. Dre, he sampled funk. He sampled Parliament, Funkadelic, because that was in his musical DNA. That was the music that he grew up listening to. And I always loved funk, probably the most of anything. This funk music, this basically dance party music that was also very political, that came out of our rhythm and blues, came out of African American experience. People like James Brown, Parliament Funkadelic. So I would listen to that, and then I got into this hip hop, and I wanted to make it myself, but I felt weird being a Jewish white guy making hip hop. So now we're getting somewhere. Okay, you start to see where we're heading here. Because I wanted to put myself into the music. Just a second, Poopsie's here. Okay, Poopsie's here. This will make the presentation that much better. Okay, there's Poopsie. Everybody say hi to Poopsie.
Hi, Poopsie!
Okay, cool. Oh, hey
Poopsie.
Poopsie. So hip hop all started with breaks. Breaks are moments in records and moments in songs where everything stops except for one instrument or the drums or something. And you find these little breaks in old records or in any recorded music, and you take those little breaks and you chop them up and you match them with other breaks. And you dance to these breaks. You make the break repeat. You'd have two copies of the same record on two turntables. You play the break one time, it goes boom, boom, dat, boom, boom, dat. Now on the same record over there, if you play it at the same place, it goes boom, boom, dat, boom, boom, dat. And if you meanwhile rewind the first record as this one is playing, you can go boom, boom, dat, 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 boom, boom, bat. And you create this endless loop, this endless rhythm that people would dance to, and people would rap over top of, people would sing over top of. Of course, the dancing to the break became something called breakdancing. And in fact, this whole thing, it was this amazing cultural explosion in the 70s and 80s of people breakdancing, of people singing and writing poetry, which became rap, and then people doing art, which became this graffiti, and people so dancing, art, poetry, music. It was a full-on cultural explosion and a cultural movement, this hip-hop umbrella. So I wanted to make hip-hop, and I started to look through my parents' record collections. Now, if you look at the history of hip-hop, you look at these basically, they were all Jamaican immigrants in New York, in Brooklyn, in the Bronx, that had their parents' Jamaican records, and then they had these sound systems, and they would use the music of their ancestors to make this new music that they could feel cool with, and they could actually survive in this. It was not a great economy at the time, so they were making art and making beauty come out of nothing, out of the ghetto. It was this ghetto music, but they were trying to express themselves. They're inventing new dance forms, new art forms, and that always sort of blew my mind and was so inspiring. So I started to look through my parents' record collection, like my hip hop forebearers did, like Grandmaster Flash, and I started to try to find records that represented me in this new music. I didn't want to just sample James Brown and Parliament Funkadelic like like Dr. Dre. I wanted to sample something that told my story. So I looked through their records, and what do I find? Well, my parents are second generation Canadian Jews, and they assimilated, So I found a lot of Joan Baez, and I found a lot of the Four Freshmen, and I found a lot of whatever, but one thing I also found was records by Theodore Bickel, and then Jewish holiday records, and then a couple cantorial records. And as a kid growing up in the 90s trying to be cool, I didn't know anything about cool Jewish music at all. I didn't even know that such a thing existed. There was some early on I heard about this Don Byron sings the music of Mickey Katz record, and I got that. And actually that was my first Klezmer record, and it blew my mind. The humor of it, the funky rhythms, the melodies. But I had no access to that as a kid growing up. With all this assimilation that happened, we didn't grow up with Yiddish melodies and nigunim and all that stuff. So it came through this hip-hop collecting of old records. So I started to use my parents' record collection. I mean, the first rap I ever wrote was something called the Jew Funk instead of the G-Funk by Dr. Dre. And this is a good 25, 30 years ago, because now I'm an old man, and now I can look back to those olden days when I was a little teenager, and anyway, so my first rap was this Jew funk thing, and I even put a little bit of Hebrew in it because the impetus was just there from the beginning with hip hop and with keeping it real and representing who you are, that I wanted to put something of my identity. And at first, I didn't have an identity yet as a Jew. I had these weird random records, and I had my Hebrew school experience. But then I moved to Montreal to go to university. And it was exactly at that time where CDs had been invented. And so people were throwing out their vinyl. And I was all gung-ho about collecting records, looking for samples. And so it was sort of a perfect storm. I would go to the Salvation Army, I would go to the thrift store, I would go to a church basement or a synagogue basement, and there was reams of vinyl. And they're 25 cents each. When CDs were around, hey, look, Noah Gutman's here. When CDs first started, they were $40 each, $30, So you can't experiment like that. You can't buy 25 CDs and go home and hope that something's cool. You have to. But with vinyl, you can. I would just buy reams and reams of vinyl, and I did. And at first, it was just looking for any cool sample. It didn't have to be a Jewish thing. I wasn't narrow-mindedly pursuing this it wasn't like I wasn't being a fascist about it. I wasn't automatically trying to make Jewish hip hop right out of I just wanted to make funky things. I wanted to make cool original things that represented who I was. So I think my story here as the inaugural talking head for you guys could be interesting for people that are coming to Jewish music with a newfound curiosity or an openness, and they don't know quite what it's all about. I've been interested in this for 25 years now, and I'm still confused about these unanswerable questions. What is Jewish music? What is a Jewish composer? Is there such a thing as an inherently Jewish melody or a mode, or where does it all come from, or how did it develop? And all these questions I've been asking and trying to figure out since I was this hip hop making crate digger of a teenager, just looking for samples, looking for breaks. So I started to buy records. Now I have 10,000 LPs. Okay. Unfortunately, we're not in my apartment right now in Montreal, which would be fun because I could show you. But I was just there. I ran there to try to gather stuff to live with for the next 10 months because I don't know what on earth I'm going to be doing with my life. So when I was there, I brought some records to show you people out there in internet land to show you a little bit about what I mean. So I started to collect these records. They're 25 cents each. They're 50 cents each. And I started to find this incredible treasure. And you know what? Now I'm a little mad. I'm angry at the world that this treasure has been somehow forgotten, has been somehow swept under the rug. As a Jewish person today, like I champion this music, and I wish that Jews could have some pride in their own culture, and not a jokey pride. It's not a joke. It's not ironic. It's not. I mean, it can also be that, but like Jews had created a vast repertoire of incredible music and poetry and dances and songs and it's really, I mean, obviously with the Holocaust that just destroyed the source of the culture, but then with assimilation in America and just a kind of laziness and a kind of weird shame about our own culture that grew out of this post-war experience, it's tragic, obviously. So it's things like this where when I got into making this hip hop stuff, I saw it as a way that I could help foster a new sense of pride in our culture and in our legacy. And now with the internet, with YouTube, blah blah blah, it's also accessible. It's just nobody really. Lots of people know where to look, but people don't know where to look. So where do they look? You get lost on YouTube. You could go in the wrong direction very easily. So you need people to help, to help guide it while we're all trying to figure out this lost tradition. Okay, so I'm looking through the bins. What do I find? I find something like this. Okay, the Happy People. Now, what is this? This is Klezmer music from the 50s by a guy named Danny Rubenstein. What's Klezmer music? Klezmer is this Eastern European, basically instrumental dance music. If you're curious about that, look up what should they do, Laurie, if they're curious about Klezmer. We'll talk after I blab.
They should join the UCLA Klezmer Ensemble, and they should come to our the UCLA Klezmer workshops that we will be hosting virtually in a couple of weeks.
Live there. So online, they could go to the Milken archive, the Milken archive, for example. Right?
Sure, and then they need to get enough Tully Brandwein album.
Okay, or a Dave Terrace record like this. Yeah. So I started to find these records. The first record I actually found that really changed my life was this record here, which is you see, is it backwards on your screen or is it?
No.
Right? It is. Okay, so Aaron Lebedev. So I'm looking for breaks, and I find this record. Look at this gangster guy. Isn't he cool? What a suit. Okay, and with records, actually, it's not like books. You sort of can judge a record by its cover, okay? This record looks cool. I take it home. Shows you've never forgotten. Songs you will never forget. Okay, awesome. Yiddish Theater vignettes. I've never heard of Aaron Lebedev as a secular Jew growing up in Canada. Okay, so I took it home, and sure enough, between each verse of his song, there's a funky little orchestral break. There's a funky little thing that happens that goes. Now with hip hop, you just need something to happen one time, and then you take that and you loop it and you make a whole song out of that. Now, it sounds a little reductionist. It sounds like you're losing a lot with that, and obviously it's not the same as Mahler, to have this one loop going on all day, And bad hip hop, like bad classical music or bad anything, it will be lazy. So it's not just that one loop that happens. You would add things to that loop, and you add drums, and you have a chorus, and you write a melody, and it becomes a song, and it becomes like sophisticated composition. It can, at its best. So anyway, I take this record home, I find this loop, and that was really the beginning of the end for me, because I got into music and trying to want to make music maybe for a living. I didn't study music at school. Okay? Meanwhile, before we get back to this stack here, I a cousin signed me up for a thing called Klezmer Canada, which happens in north of Montreal. And Noah Gutman loves Klezmer Canada. He's got 2 thumbs up. So Klezmer Canada is a Yiddish cultural retreat. If anyone is watching this and is interested in what I'm talking about, check out klezcanada.com or CA. I don't know. But it's a camp.
It's .org. Klezcanada.org.
.org. Thank you, Noah Gutman. And I went to Klezmer Canada this first year thinking, a bunch of like people wearing funny hats, like playing fiddles in the trees, like playing corny music. Because if you don't know about the good stuff, there's a lot of corny stuff. There's a lot of badly played klezmer and corny old. I had never been exposed to great new rocking klezmer music, and I went to this Klezmer Canada, fulfilling a family obligation, thinking, oh, this is cute. I'll go talk with my cousins. It'll be a nice way to spend time with my cousins. And I'll bring a mini disc recorder so that I can record things, so that I can sample them and put them into this new hip hop stuff that I'm making. But I was really dreading it, frankly. I thought it was really corny. I was always avoiding any sort of organized sort of Jewish activity. And this, so I went to Klezmer Canada, and lo and behold, sure, there was lots of people in funny hats, playing fiddles, dangling from the trees, and playing some corny music. But there was also this incredibly vibrant, just this spirit in the air of a passion for a lost music and a passion for rhythms and melodies that were from my own culture. They weren't African American cool music that I already worshipped. It wasn't Duke Ellington that I already knew was cool and that the world knows is amazing. No, it was these other big bands. It was these other sources of music, and this music that came from my roots, from my Ukrainian, Romanian, Czech, Russian, Belarusian roots. And so I went, and it wasn't just about young and old. In fact, what was so cool about Klezmer Canada was the mix of young and old, and a way to be together with older people and younger people, all in it to win it, and all sharing stories and learning from each other. And in fact, one of the coolest musicians I ever met in my entire life was an older lady named Elaine Hoffman Watts, who was a drummer from Philadelphia, and I was there, thinking, oh, this is going to be corny. Like, what's going on here? And she sat down at the drum kit and proceeded to play the funkiest beat I'd ever seen played on a drum kit. And it wasn't a funky, funk beat. It was a funky Jewish beat. It was this funky Bulgar rhythm, this incredible syncopation that became the most important sort of dance form for Jews at a certain
Can you give us just a quick example on the keys?
Well, on the keys,
or on something.
I'll do it with my face. But it's basically 1, 2, ready, ding, 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 bing, bing, bing. And I mean, I could do a whole chat on the Bulgar and the magic of the Bulgar that really works when you have, it only really works when you have the like strict grid architecture going on underneath it, which is straight, which is the bass going boom, 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 and then the offbeats. So it's like, so that's fine, and that's polka, and that's a lot of music. There's a lot of oompa, and that's kind of, it's okay. But if you add to that the syncopation, it's got this incredibly funky lift that oh, thank you, Lori and Noah Gutman. Thanks, Mom. She's downstairs. Okay, so So I heard this funky rhythm, Elaine Hoffman Watts, this incredible, and this character from Philly. Wow. And I was sold. It wasn't anymore about, oh, this is cute and I'm just doing this for some family obligation and blah, blah, blah. And I'll steal some samples here and there and kind of looking down on it, frankly. I mean, a lot of mainstream Jewish culture just looks down on this music and on this culture and on this history. And it's because they don't know. It's because people just don't know, it's fine. We just have to tell more people about it. And the trick for me was hearing the primary sources. It wasn't hearing necessarily the local klezmer band there was this incredible rupture with this culture, and a lot of what makes it so funky and awesome has been lost. So people are desperately trying to relearn it, and we're getting better and better at it. And this must be the third or fourth generation of a so-called klezmer revival that's happened. But we're deep into this revival, and now we have people that are growing up that actually have it in their ears from childhood, and you see that at places like Klez Canada, with people bringing their kids, and they're growing up playing the music, and they have it in their ears. That's how you have to really live and learn a culture, by living it. I use other tricks to try to live it. Because so much was lost, I use new technologies to slow things down and try to zoom in on things and magnify the sound so I can hear these trills and these ornaments and what's going on, and I study it. But for me, it was really hearing this and then getting to meet living masters of the style. So Klez Canada, old records. This is so there's something called Yiddish Theater, which was there used to be literally dozens, if not hundreds, of Yiddish theaters in New York City, and in big metropolises in Montreal. There was a big Yiddish theater scene with Jewish music and Yiddish plays, and not just Yiddish stories, but like Shakespeare in Yiddish, and these incredible performers like Aaron Lebedev. Okay, here's something. This is this Dave Terrace thing. I mean, once you get into klezmer, you start to put it into different categories. There's really old klezmer from recorded in Europe. There's different regions of klezmer, and then there's this sort of American form of klezmer that it's become very popular in the revival. This is like klezmer recorded in the 50s, when there was still an audience for it, but it was dwindling as people wanted to dance to the more popular dances of the day. They didn't really want to be seen as Jews with their heavy accents and their special dances. So this record, for example, is from the late 50s, 1958, and it's a real hybrid where it's still got all the roots and all the tom, all that flavor that makes it amazingly uniquely klezmer feel. But it's also trying to be a bit jazzy. It's trying to be American. But this is a masterpiece record. Everybody loves this record. It was reissued by Henry Sapoznik. Yes, okay, here's another klezmer record. And klezmer is mostly instrumental. Yiddish theater music has a lot of klezmer in it, but it also has singing. And so when you talk about klezmer, you're mostly talking about instrumental dance music. So this is the Dukes of Freilachland, which was sort of the recording name of the Epstein brothers. And then I just started to really just dig and really actively pursue collecting as much of this music and trying to figure out all the shades of the story as possible. And so I started to find things like this. Leo Fuld. Okay, who's Leo Fuld? Born in Rotterdam in 1914. And he was this incredible Dutch singer who survived the war. He came to America. Actually, when he went back to Europe after the war, he didn't sing a note for 5 years after he saw the destruction of Yiddish culture. But then he decided that it was important that he sing again. So there's lots of recordings of his. So this is sort of like his repertoire is folk songs or a mixture of folk song and then theater song. Then I started to find things like this. cantorial music, which is another important, root of this tree. And I think there's a lot of roots on this tree. And like the tree that I'm looking at, I mean, what's the tree? Is the tree the Jewish music tree, or is the tree just the music tree? But let's look at just the little Jewish music tree, which has already a million roots. I've only really explored Eastern European Jewish music. I won't pretend that I'm any kind of expert on Sephardic music or music, Jewish music from Iraq or from Morocco or Africa or whatever, or like Jewish music from weird regions in Russia or whatever. So whatever. I don't pretend to be like an expert in all of Jewish music, and frankly, these unanswered questions, like maybe there is no answer because there is no answer. Like, I don't know if we need to really nail down this answer of what is Jewish music, what is a Jewish composer, blah, blah, blah. If you analyze this cantorial music and you compare it to how Leo Fuld sings, and you compare that to how Dave Terrace plays the clarinet, you start to see similarities, and you start to see stylistic choices that are being made by these artists that are universal, that go over everything somehow. The way that Dave Terrace ornaments his clarinet, it's kind of similar. In a way, you could see how it was influenced by the cantorial music, by the music from the synagogue. Oh wow, this one's signed by Cantor Kapov Kagan. And so I must have 300 cantorial records, and then 78s too. Then I started to find weird Jewish records. Okay, here's Theodore Bickel, a Passover record called The Fifth Cup, with the synthesizer maven Gershon Kingsley. Do you know the song Popcorn? You know that song? That was written by Gershon Kingsley. He actually passed away this year. He was 96, I think. But this is a weird record. Okay, Theodore Bickel. I grew up listening to of any Jewish music that I grew up with. Theodore Bickel was it. I think he actually made it into the record collections of assimilated Jews in America. And actually, I had the great honor of working with and knowing Theodore Bickel quite a bit. We did a show together. He came to Klez Canada. He was always very supportive, even though he maybe not obviously, wasn't a big hip-hop fan. Theodore Bickel had such a big heart and such big ears that he heard in what I was doing. He heard that I was trying to make Yiddish culture live, and so he always supported me. In fact, I went to LA once and did a show, and he got up on stage. This was about 20 years ago, and he sang Mein Städtele Bells. No preparation. I just had these beats going on with a gospel singer and a funk band, and Theodore Bickel came to the show, and I said, Theo, will you come up and sing Mein Städtele Bells? And he did, and it was awesome, and then we recorded it. If you're curious, please check out. It's from one of my first records, Ghetto Blaster, and featuring Theodore Bickel, and we became friends. And wow, to me, that's another great treat of this archaeology that I'm doing, looking at this music, because it's kind of off the beaten track, because it's not something taught in most universities, it's not heard on the radio, it's not part of the major mainstream discourse. It's this kind of funky secret society. And so because it's funky and secret and underground, if you're in it, you get to hang out with all these other cool people that are sneaking around in this amazing underground. And so I probably wouldn't have access to Branford Marsalis if I loved jazz. He's a big shot. He's awesome, but he's a big shot. He's like rarefied.
Hey, Josh.
What's that?
Sorry to interrupt you. But being that we don't have a ton of time left, I know you also wanted to get what?
Why not?
I just wanted to make sure. I know you also wanted to make sure you demonstrated for everybody what you do with the sampler and what you do, all that kind of stuff. So,
okay, cool. So, thank you for the warning. Whew. It's tough boss. So I got to meet a lot of cool people like Theodore Bickel, who is so generous with his art and his singing. And a lot of us in the scene, like, we just really benefit from these people. I mean, I wish there was more people like Theodore Bickel. I implore the people watching to tell their fancy Hollywood friends that are living in LA, that are part of this Yiddish story, we need you. Steven Spielberg, I know you're watching this. Like, hook us up, hook up the Yiddish scene. We're ready. We're willing to take Yiddish to the world. It's like, it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's something to be celebrated. What's the school called that you were working out of? Alpert? What's it? Herb Alpert. Come on, Herb. I know
Alpert School of Music.
Right now. Herb, take us on tour with you. Do a Yiddish Klezmer record. We need people like you. We need people, big stars like Theodore Bickel to fight for this culture. Okay, so Theodore Bickel. Then I started to find stupid records. What's this called? Have a Jewish Christmas? ? Okay, what is this? And then holiday records. Okay, here's a Passover record, poetry record. Oh, look at that, poetry. Hertz Grossbard. So Yiddish poetry. Here's this guy Mickey Katz, you may or may not have heard of. See, I have it right here. Who was an amazing guy from Cleveland, who ended up being based in LA, who did these incredible takeoffs of popular songs and then added klezmer to them. So you have these parody songs, you have serious dance music, you have poetry, you have cantorial music. The Berry Sisters, they were sort of a pop act, if there was such a thing as Yiddish pop, singing these folk songs. Here's a guy named Noach Nachbush who came out of the Yiddish Theater, but it was more of he did recitations and he sang folk songs and art songs. There's this whole history of Yiddish art song that were like German Lieder. Okay, then there's Irving Fields, Bagels and Bongos, he was like the first fusion artist in history. Well, that's absolutely not true, but he tried to make Yiddish music hip. So he took the songs he grew up with, and then he added funky Latin rhythms because they were the funky rhythms of his day. That's what people wanted to be dancing to. So I sort of see him as like the godfather of what I did, and actually became friends with Irving Fields. He came to Klez Canada too, and he made a million records. Amazing guy. Okay, there's more Theodore Bickel. And then this kind of record, which is a record of nigunim, which is actually, I prepared for this talk, and I made this pile so that I would end with this record. What is a nigun? What are nigunim? Okay, well, growing up as a assimilated Jewish kid, I had no idea what a nigun is, but having collected these records, and now I have a million. The Hasidic records of nigunim, which are these wordless songs, these wordless devotional songs written by Hasidic rebbes over the years that would be sung by their flocks, and they were sung mostly in unison, and they were mostly wordless. That because there's like this cliche that words get in the way, so these songs were these Yadadai songs, like. So that's not Yiddish. That's not some weird language. That's just phonemes. That's just ways to sing a melody. Stuff. And it's actually very specific. That language of singing nigunim isn't just la 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 la. There's ways to sing those songs, and there's ways to articulate the melodies. So this kind of blew my mind because these were catchy tunes, and this is really what sort of took my trying to make Yiddish music for today to the next level. I found on one of these records, just by the way, if you're curious about this music, Hasidic Nigunim, please check out Chabad.org. They have every single one of these vinyl records, which were produced in the 60s and 70s. They're all online. Every volume, there's about 20 volumes. Yeah, Noah Gutman didn't even know that. And you go online. It has all these records. Everything's digitized. You can hit any niggin. It tells you the story of the niggin, who wrote it. It has the lyrics of the niggin, if there are lyrics. It tells the story, even the music of the niggin. In fact, if you want to take it to the next level, you get these books, which is called the Sefer HaNigunim, the books of the Nigunim. These are made by Lubavitch, but every kind of Hasid has Nigunim, not just Lubavitch. Bobover and Satmar, they all have their Niggin traditions. But these books are really cool. They have all the Niggins written out, Nigunim. The plural of Niggin is Nigunim. Okay, I have to tell a story because when I first was working with Fred Wesley from the James Brown Band, and we were working on this Abraham Inc. project, which I think you started this whole presentation by showing Abraham Inc. I said, yo, Fred, check out this niggin. And Fred Wesley said, what did you call me? Which is pretty funny because he has an amazing sense of humor. Okay, and shout out to Fred Wesley, who we've been working with for over 10 years. We just made our new record. It's called Together We Stand, which is actually an important message for today. Check it out online, Together We Stand. So I found these records, these nigunim, these melodies, and I found a sample. Now I'll show you in the 3 minutes that remains before we ask questions, I'll show you a bit of just the process of how I turned a niggin into a pop song and a hip hop song. So like I said, there's something called sampling, which is, at first with hip hop, it was manually done with turntables. You would just loop things with the turntable. But before long, they had computers and machines that did it automatically. And they're called samplers. And they're basically like a dedicated computer. So instead of doing everything on this computer, all it does is sounds, okay? So you have a record, you plug your record into the machine. It can be any kind of record, doesn't have to be a record, it can be a tape machine, whatever, any source, you put it into the thing and you press record. And then whatever you've had is recorded. Okay? Now, or so that's from a Hasidic Nigunim record, and to me it was a catchy little riff that I could sample. Okay, and because it's on a computer, you can trim it, you can chop it up, you can chop it into a million pieces, you can stretch it, you can turn it upside down. It's digital. It's whatever you can imagine doing to it. I feel like I'm screaming, by the way. I hope I haven't been screaming at everybody, but I'm just freaking out. I'm very excited to be here, Lori. Thank you for this opportunity. So you take a recording, you put it in there, and then you keep going. I don't just stop with the one loop. I find other sounds. Okay, here's one. Okay, or
so that means that we have a neshama, a soul, which is a part of God.
Okay.
God blew it into us, and it keeps us alive.
Okay, why not? Just little sounds. Where's that from? I don't remember. Okay. Classical music, funk, salsa, funny kids records. You take it all, you chop it up. Then you make something called a program, which means that on every button of this machine is a different sound. Okay? And you program that, like anything. You just set, I want that sound to be on that button. Okay, great. So now you've got all these sounds, and then you start to see what goes together. Okay, and this is, to me, the miracle of this process of composition, is that you take a sample like these guys, okay, and they're looping. I press play, and they're just going to do that all day long. and they create that thing. Now, they're in a certain key. Okay, what key are they in? Okay, they're in F minor. Great. They're at a certain tempo. It's 87.3 is the tempo. Okay, great. So now you look around in the world and you dig around in all the other records and you find things. Because if you take this sample, where are they? Okay, you can speed it up. You can slow it down. Okay, but if you do, you change the key. So you're trying to find things that go together in the same key and in the same tempo. And sometimes it happens, and it's a miracle that something recorded in 1920 and something recorded in 1972, if you slow them up and speed them up, and you take just little bits of them, they will go together, and you can make a new song. So with this piece, I found this melody. Da-da-da, da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da-da. It's this Hasidic niggin, Lubavitch. And I thought, that's a beautiful melody. Okay, great. Now I found this other yabba bum bum, yabba bum bum, this kind of rhythmic figure that happens. Great. Then I kept looking, and I found this. Where are they? There we go. Okay, cowboy. I'm a cowboy. Okay, I'm a cowboy. Okay, and look at this. It's in F minor. Cool. Okay, so I got this cowboy thing in F minor. It goes with this. I'm a cowboy. I'm a cowboy. On this trail to nowhere. All I have is a horse, and even he would leave if he broke free of this curse. All I've got, memory, and they aren't even mine. And the dry wind wails as my song is blown away. I look to the stars. You are never alone. I look to the stars. Yeah. You are never alone. Yo, this is straight from the horse's mouth. We are buried treasure. Vagabond, traveled on, gravel paw, battle on, strong for Yo, this is straight from the horse's mouth. So, I took that melody, I gave it to a gospel singer, I gave it to a country singer. Thank you so much. I said, check out this catchy melody. What a gorgeous melody that as a secular Jew, I would never have heard in a million years. And as just a non-Jew, I would have not heard either. So I thought, let's take this melody. Have you ever heard of Gilgul Funanign? The story about the voyage of a melody, and it's a beautiful Yiddish short story by Peretz, and it tells the story of a song that was hummed in a field, that somebody hears that song and they take it to the city and they turn it into a theater song, and then the rabbi's in the theater and he hears it and he takes it to the synagogue and it becomes a prayer, and then you just see this voyage of this melody. It's a beautiful story, and I feel like I'm sort of part of this Gilgul of melodies. And so that's basically how I turned that song into a song called, am I fluent in Yiddish? Asked Samantha. No. More and more as I sing. I mean, this is a very short part of my story, because this beat and this song I made 20 years ago, 15 years ago. And since then, I've put out 15 albums, and I've worked in many different ways, and I write musicals, and I sing Yiddish songs with a string quartet and with a big band, and I have many projects. So this is just one little window into one situation, but it's kind of a good way to tell a lot of stories. Hip hop is a beautiful way to bring a lot of different elements together and make art and celebrate when you don't have maybe all the resources in the world, and you're hearkening to the voices of your ancestors, and you're honoring their voices, and you're making something new. for today, but it's grounded in history. So no, I don't speak fluently Yiddish, but actually, since I've been singing Yiddish more and more as part of my job and part of my living before this virus has completely canceled everything that I was supposed to do this year, I've learned a ton about Yiddish, and I can kind of hold the conversation, and I love to talk and try, and I look up every word that I sing in the dictionary, and I understand all the songs that I sing. So that's sort of my process of the hip hop thing. Mark said something. Can you tell us one about you, Ne?
About your new album.
A new album. Okay. So, before I do, I'm just going to say that song is called You Are Never Alone, which is also kind of relevant today. I really feel like, as we're all alone together and isolated, trying to live in this really weird, horrible scene. Listen to the song You Are Never Alone. It was a cool video too. Maybe you could put up a link to this video. Sort of the beginning of me really having a voice in mainstream culture, using Yiddish music and using all the tools and resources that I've been collecting and learning about and learning from. And it became sort of a hit. And it was a Hasidic tune with a Jewish beat. And thank you, Samantha. I appreciate it. And it was the beginning of a journey, working with David Krakauer, working with Abraham Inc., making all these records. My newest record, there's sort of three records that came out this year, last year. One is called Die Frosch, which please check out. It's like me going back to my roots and sort of cutting through all this hip hop stuff and just singing Yiddish songs with a string quartet. That was a really fun, special project. And then this new record from Abraham Inc. called Together We Stand, which probably nobody's heard yet, but if they should check it out. It's pretty cool. That's a really meeting of the master of klezmer clarinet, David Krakauer, with the master of funk, Fred Wesley, who played with Count Basie and Ray Charles and Ike and Tina Turner, and then has been working with us for 10 years to try to make funky new Jewish music. And then I had another record called The Second Season, which is a recording of my most recent musical, which also doesn't have hip hop in it, which is just original songs. I'd love to talk to you about that too, because there's a lot of klezmer and Yiddish song in there, even though it's not at all about Yiddish music, and it's sung by Fred Wesley, who's a great African-American legend of funk music and pop music. So those are sort of some new projects that I worked on last year. Any more questions?
I see a question from Fran about whether there will be more events like this. And yes, there will be many more like this. They'll be continuing for the foreseeable future, for the remainder of the spring quarter at least.
Awesome.
We're looking forward to offering a number of different artists. The next artists the next artists on the docket are Sheila Silver, a fantastic classical composer featured in the Milken archive, and Basia Schechter, another fantastic musician. So, and that's again just the beginning. So, and information will be going out from the Lowell Milken Fund related to that.
It's an honor to be part of that company, I must say, and to be part of this community. Thank you, Lori, and thank you, everybody.
It's an honor to have you. Are there any other questions for Josh?
Come on, Jared. Yeah.
Jared Goldman.
Hello,
Toronto.
Hello. Can you hear me?
I can. Sounded great.
Okay. I would love to know what other sort of really influential or important American klezmer records that you've checked out or that have influenced you. As like a drum set player primarily, that's like my shit, and like where I've really found a connection with this music. So yeah, I'm wondering if you have any other records.
I mean, I didn't even go into anything from the klezmer revival. Okay, I haven't shouted out anybody that's now doing this. That wasn't my topic. And I'd love to do a whole thing about the amazing work that people are doing now. And there's tons of stuff. There's tons of resources. Maybe I'll make a list that we can attach to this file. You know, the Klezmatics and the Brave Old World and Krakauer and I'm afraid of who I'm going to say, and Cookie and Josh and Christian David and Michael Winograd and Daniel Kahn and Jeff Berner and Sasha Lurie and Alan Byrne and the Weimar and okay, I'm getting in trouble because I'm gonna miss somebody, but you know, like Deborah Strauss and all these incredible artists that I'm sad that are all locked away in their houses right now and we can't do concerts. It's depressing. But if you're asking about like classic Klezmer, like great old recordings of Klezmer, I would recommend. There's a guy named Kurt Bjorling who makes these tapes. Okay, because they're impossible to copy. You have to order his tapes. It forces you to order his tapes, which is awesome, which is a sneaky way to sort of jack the system. So look up Kurt Bjorling because he makes these compilation tapes. There's something called Jewish Orchestras from like 1911 to 1920. And that'll give you a lot of cool rhythm ideas, vibraphone, xylophone stuff. I already mentioned Elaine Hoffman Watts. Her father was the percussionist in this thing called Candel's Orchestra in Philly. You're shaking your head, so you already know about her. Because there's a very interesting, you can really feel how she plays the beat and what she's kind of like the important part of what she's trying to show in the beat that she plays. And there's a lot of modern recordings of her, so it's handy. It's a handy resource because you hear it really clear what she's doing. Another great drummer was in the Epstein Brother band. So like look up all the Epstein Brothers recordings for like great ideas about. I mean, I showed you one earlier. Where was it? The Dukes of Freilachland. Every song in that album, like it's all that beat, but you start to see that they're nuanced. It's not all that beat. In fact, every melody, every song has its own unique way of dealing with the Bulgar, with that syncopated rhythm. So, I mean, those are two good places to start. The Mickey Katz records have great drumming on them. And now, I mean, there's people studying it now, people doing it now. Richie Barchet and Guy Shalom and of course David Licht from the Klezmatics. And again, I'm going to get in trouble for not naming all my amazing talented friends that are amazing percussionists. But that's good. How's that? Is that a good start?
Yeah, thank you. That's a lot, and that's an excellent start. Thank you very much.
Cool. Nice to meet you, Jared.
Likewise. Thank you.
Cheers.
Any more questions? Well, on behalf of the Lowell Milken Fund, I just want to give one more big thank you to Josh Dolgin and his adorable puppy.
Oopsie!
For Poopsie.
Before you totally shut it down, Poopsie Sings the Blues. Look it up. Okay? Poopsie Sings the Blues. Please search it on YouTube. I feel like you will not be disappointed. Okay? Shameless plug for Poopsie.
Absolutely. With that, I also want to thank my colleagues Beth Kramer and Mark Kligman. We're really a team. We put this together as a team. And
Mark Kligman, I love you. I love you, Beth, too. It was so nice to see you in LA, and it was nice to meet Mark in Prague at a cantorial convention. And that's why we're friends now, because I met him there, of all places. So, yeah, sorry, keep going.
Oh, and with that, just thank you, everyone. Please do look for information related to our future programs. We've got some really cool stuff coming up, and we want to see all of you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you all. Take care.
Bye. Bye, friends. Hey, Noah.
Bye.
Woo! Did we do it?
Yeah. Great job, Josh. Noah, thanks for dropping in. Both Noahs. Hey, Noahs. And thank you so much, Fran, for coming.
My pleasure. Thank you.
It's always so great to see you. Take good care.
Thank you so much, Josh. This is really great.
Thank you, Mark. Great to see you.
We got a little Klez Canada hang happening.
We gotta do more of this. You're really wonderful.
You're too kind. I really appreciate it. You know, like we're all kind of really messed up right now. So this is really a great gesture and a great way to get people together. It's awesome.
All right, Josh. I can't wait to hear the new album, man.
We'll do more of this.
I got to get inspired. Okay, I'll try.
All right,
All right.
Thanks,
Take care.
Mark.
everybody.
Be in touch.
Bye,
Thanks,
guys.
Lori. Thanks,
Thank you.
Mark.
Bye, friend.
Bye-bye.
See you later.
Take care.
Woo-hoo. Okay.